Hey there, friends. Welcome back to the Families of Character Show, the podcast where we dive into real conversations to help you show up with intention, live with purpose, and raise kids of great character in this wild digital world. Today's episode, it's going to be a game changer. I'm telling you, we're talking about the one thing that's stealing your attention, your peace of mind, and yep, even your family time. You guessed it, your phone. But don't panic. We're not here to shame or guilt you into tossing your phone in the trash. We're here to give you hope. Because today I'm sitting down with Joe Hollier, co founder of the Light Phone, a revolutionary device that's helping people take back their time, their presence, and their lives. And this isn't just about tech, it's about freedom. It's about finally having the mental space to be the parent, the spouse, and the human you want to be. Joe shares the powerful story behind the Light Phone, why less is more when it comes to our devices, and how ditching distractions might just be the thing that saves your relationships. You'll hear the why, the how, and the real life impact it's having on families just like yours. So if you've ever looked up from your screen, that phone of yours that you keep in your pocket and thought, where did the time go? This episode is for you. Stick around till the end because Joe shares a vision for the future of tech that'll inspire you and maybe even challenge you to make a bold move. So, welcome to the show, Joe.
Wow, thank you so much. Thanks for such a lovely intro. Sure,
Oh,
well
man.
said.
Well, Joe, you're not just out there developing a new device, a new phone, a revolutionary device that gives people time back in their life, but as evidenced by your background there in your studio apartment in Brooklyn, New York, you're also an accomplished artist. I think I read in your bio that, let's see here. Yeah, your work's been commissioned by the Smithsonian, and your client portfolio includes Nike, CNN, and the Lincoln Center, just to name a few. So you've been an artist your whole life. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't have the words always as a kid, but looking back, it feels quite obvious now.
Hmm. So good. Still creating things now. Creator of this amazing phone that is helping so many people kind of break this addiction to this computer in their pocket. That's what I call the smartphone. So just tell us, what was happening in your own life when you became interested in creating an alternative to the smartphone, this instant gratification, kind of everything in your fingertips type of phone that I would say, what, 90% of us use?
Yeah, at least 90%, right?
Yeah.
So I think, we started the Light Phone back in 2014. And ever since I graduated art school at the School of Visual Arts in 2012, I was working as a freelance artist. So, having a smartphone on me, it's easy to imagine how the boundaries between online and offline were so easily crossed. And, being at the beach on the weekend and going to change a song, I might see an email from a client, which I can't really do anything about in the moment because I'm not at my computer, but I'm still distracted, frustrated, and thrown off on what was supposed to be my day off at the beach. And, I mean, that's just one example. I think I also was feeling some pressure of how my studio time sort of was always my sacred place, a place to come and focus on my inner, workings in life and work things out. And I found myself with a smartphone in the studio, this illusion of productivity, of sharing process, distracting myself from actually even doing the thing, or, just sort of throwing off that train of thought that was so special to me. So, I was feeling all sorts of impacts, but I didn't necessarily consider myself a smartphone addict in the way that I'm sure most of us didn't quite see it that way, or at least always. And at the same time, Google, of all companies, ironically, had an experimental program for designers, of which I was a part of, and that's where I met my co-founder Kaiwei. And they were encouraging us to think of new types of technology companies, but really what they meant was smartphone apps. And so we learned a lot more how and why some of these smartphone apps were being built and funded. And the core thing we saw was that they were after this one metric of retention. How much time does a user spend with our product every single day? Because if you made something sticky, something that people would check and recheck, well, there was a business model to be made. You could scale it infinitely because it was software collecting all sorts of data and selling very targeted, effective advertising at a top dollar. So this was sort of the business model of so much of the internet. And Kaiwei and I just kind of said, well, gee, he feels, everyone we are interviewing feels habitually overwhelmed. We're actually craving an escape from the smartphone. Could building some app that fights for one more hour of your day actually make us any happier? Or am I ready to throw my phone in the ocean and fall off the grid? Obviously, that would be an extreme measure. So we started experimenting with this idea of going light. And it really was inspired by like my very first internet experience where it was tied to one computer in my dad's study office. And if you left that one chair, you left the internet behind. It was a very clear online, offline. And now that I had a smartphone 24/7, I could check email on the bathroom before I brushed my teeth, just, thousands of times a day in theory. So we wanted to encourage people to intentionally check out, but still retain the peace of mind that, God forbid, there was an emergency, you're able to call or be reached. That was a huge modern convenience of the introduction of cell phones. So how can we take these, fundamental utilities and things that are undeniably important to have, without bringing the entire computer? And that was how the journey started. And it's evolved quite a lot since the first light phone, which only made phone calls. But that was a little bit of how we sort of came to this place of, wow, there's an opportunity for a lot of people that aren't just artists that want to focus in their studio. We're hearing from parents, we're hearing from students, we're hearing from CEOs and celebrities. It really crossed a lot of demographics and geographic boundaries that, not a lot of products do. So even as an artist, I was inspired by these conversations. Because the conversation wasn't like, does it have Bluetooth? It was like, oh my God, I'm a father and I feel responsible to check my email on the weekend, but I'm trying to play catch with my son. And, these sort of conversations are very real.
Yes, yes. Well, and it sounds like in this Google experiment, when they're saying like, come up with a new app that will capture the attention of, hours of time from these people, and you will be able to make all this money and scale this. And the two of you went, if everybody's making all these apps and trying to steal people's time, what's the one thing people aren't doing? Trying to give people time back. And so I love that in a environment like that where you have all these creative people that are saying, yes, let's compete for this attention and time, and let's create something that people really get all into, that a few of you are willing to go, this doesn't resonate well with our conscience. Like, we really won't be happy even if we have a lot of money and we know that our app is, one of the most popular, most downloaded and used. Like, we have to, it sounds like you were thinking like, we have to really sit with this and understand how we're going to feel about distracting millions of people for our own fame and fortune.
Yeah. And I mean, that has never been either Kai or I's motivation, even in joining the program. I kind of came from an artistic angle of being critical towards tech and, not necessarily thinking I'd come out with a company and a product, but maybe some insights that I'd take into a more fine art practice. But through this, I realized that by saying I'm going to make a phone that does one thing in the age of 2015 at this point, how that was sparking all sorts of polarizing reactions. Some people told us it was the dumbest idea they'd ever heard. Why would anyone pay $100? And then you say, well, yeah, why would you? and it gets them thinking about, the side effects and stuff. So even before the product existed, I think I was seeing people's gears turning towards realizing like, oh, this relationship with this magical device I just got in the last few years isn't 100% healthy.
Yes.
And, that's step one to, a long line of potential ways that you can adjust. And a light phone might not be the only path towards adjusting that relationship. But I do think we were trying to bring awareness. And so that was, as like artists and designers, our biggest interest. We didn't, set out to be like, we're going to make the most successful company ever. But we do believe that there's a lot of people, I think there's well over 1 billion smartphones in the world, that even if a small fraction of people want something different, not like the mainstream dethroning of the smartphone, even if just a fraction of people, we still felt like that was a worthy mission, because in virtually every other industry, there's so many options for types of shoes, types of cameras, types of cars. Do you want a big SUV? Do you want a little tiny thing? Do you want to go off roads? Do you want to save? People have different choices, but it seems like when you go to a phone store, there's only these big, huge smartphones that all more or less have the exact same feature set and offering, whether it's Samsung, Google, Apple, etc. So we just felt like there was this opportunity, and an honest one too.
Yes. And tell us how you got started as a business. I mean, you kind of put this out there to the masses and this idea. Tell us how that went.
So, we were in this program and we got some really interesting feedback. It was a conversation starter, to say the least, but that still meant we were many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars away from getting an actual prototype built. So, Kaiway and I used the internet, this platform called Kickstarter, to crowdfund the original light phone. And so we put the idea out there and got really lucky that some press covered it. And I think because it had such a polarizing reaction of people loving it, hating it, it really led to like a sort of viral moment for it. And we were able to raise enough on crowdfunding to kick off the light phone experience. I think that's one of the beautiful things of the internet. I think you're going to hear me be really critical of the internet, or at least the state of it today. But I think there's still so much promise and potential and power possible to connect us, to teach us and educate and share knowledge of the internet. But I think the current state of the business models between so much of the internet is just selling ads and collecting data. It sort of disrupts that. But there's something like Kickstarter, I think, is a great example of how people can come together and say, we want to see this in the world, put down some money to actually kick it off. And once that we did that, we were able to then prove to investors and manufacturing partners that there is a group of people that are interested and willing to even put money up a year plus ahead of delivering a phone. So, that was really amazing, and a huge validation for us that we were onto something. And that really was the beginning of the light phone becoming a reality.
Crowdfunding on Kickstarter. I love it because you're not saying, guys, just throw the baby out with the bathwater. The internet is all bad. Never get online. But you're saying there's some areas that you can, maximize the benefit of the internet by getting people behind your cause and raising funds and being able to do something that otherwise you might not have been able to do. So that's fantastic. Tell us about this phone, like even just the logistics of it. You call it the light phone. Where did the name come from?
Well, the name actually was it felt so second nature. It was one of the very first names that came to mind, but it was in relation to the heaviness of the feeling of heaviness that I felt owning a smartphone. So it wasn't about the physical weight of it, but the sort of mental weight that had on us in a sort of metaphorical sense, and the light phone being this sort of light feeling. And as I thought about it more and we tried so many different other names, we found ourselves coming back to the light phone, and it just sort of felt right. And we imagined how light could be applied as a brand to potentially other objects beyond phones in the future. How could we take the same design lens of doing something very intentional, utility driven, and as beautiful as possible of a way, uh, without, vying for more and more attention and data. Like, I think there's a real place for tools that use technology well to make our lives easier so that we can go back to spending quality time with our kids, not to use it as the entertainment and the distraction from our lives, but actually to help us get back into life.
So it serves two purposes, the name. One, it's lighter because you have less of the mental drag and the weight on your mind and the overwhelm because of the constant friction of um, distraction and just the residue that hangs around when you flip from one thing to another on your phone. But also because it's lighter than the smartphone in the way of like apps and functions on the phone too.
Yeah, totally. I mean, as I started thinking on it more, all sorts of light versus dark, light as truth. I'm a photographer and an avid fan of sunsets, and light is just one of my favorite substances. Walking into a room with beautiful light, it just warm. So, there was layers of meaning that sort of were probably unconsciously in that being one of the first names that came to us.
Well, I love your website. Just the feeling I get when I go to the homepage of the Light Phone is just this freedom, this simplicity, this like breath of fresh air, this permission to just go lighter as a human. So at the time of this recording, I am 42 days into no social media. Okay, so this was kind of a
Congrats.
fast I decided to go on. And originally it was going to be this 40-day fast, and then I'd allow myself to kind of peek into it and decide if I wanted to go back or not. And the first 10 days was a bit of hell, to be honest. I recognized this behavior pattern I had of checking my phone and checking Instagram and Facebook. And it was this automatic, just absolutely unconscious, process that was happening with me. And so the first 10 days was like this feeling of kind of shame, like, do I really get on my phone this many times a day, and for what? What new information am I learning? Is it helping me in my work? All of these things. And so when I quit checking the social media apps, then I went to my email. And really for the rest, like the last 20, 30 days, I it got better, but I noticed myself just obsessively checking my email, because then that was one thing where it was like, well, I didn't say I was going off email. I said I was going off social media. So it's in my mind thinking I'm being true to my promise. But then I started backing off from my email, and I thought, what would it be like not to have phone access to my email? And then all these thoughts started coming to my mind. Oh, you'd be less productive. People would think that you're blowing them off if you don't get back to them within an hour or two. You just start telling yourself all these things about, if I don't instantly respond to someone or instantly know what's in my inbox, this is going to be bad, basically. Um, but this idea of not having email, not having social media at our fingertips, just is a real mind shift, that if you want to do these activities, which, especially email for our jobs is important aspect of our life, then you have to be very intentional about setting up time that you are in front of your computer, processing emails, getting back to people, right? And kind of doing this on a scheduled basis. So talk to us a little bit about people's experience with going, getting rid of their smartphone and everything at their fingertips to this light mode where you have talking, texting, podcasts, navigation, and is there one more feature?
Yeah, there's probably about a dozen simple tools, things like an alarm, a calendar, and a timer. But really, yeah, the light phone doesn't have any email. It doesn't have an internet browser. It doesn't have any social media or other infinite feeds. So, no news feeds. And we really, really strive to make it so that there's nothing that you can even make an excuse to check and recheck on the phone itself. Because actually, like your experience with sort of slimming down your smartphone is like rings so true to some studies that we had done prior to building the Light Phone 2, which was when we started to add some of these more utilitarian functions beyond just phone calls that the original phone had. And we saw, people would delete the social media that they were using the most, and then it became replaced very quickly with some other platform, whether that was now Reddit or shopping or email or, aimlessly looking up vacations. I think what we realized and what our users sort of were able to describe is that there's this like almost unconscious crutch that you just want to like do something on the smartphone, even though you don't have the social media. You sat on your couch after a day of work and you're like, now what? And instead of like thinking of what to do, you can just pull out the phone and there's something to kind of pacify us.
Ah, this is killing me, Joe. This is so true, and this is my life right now.
And I mean, it's to be expected. We become in some ways rewired by having such a hyper connectivity, and that dopamine that comes with seeing a new thing, whether it's positive or negative. News is clickbait, and it's kind of all over. The email, is a more of a roulette, I guess, of good and bad. But so that's why we felt it was really intentional to design phones that felt drastically different than a smartphone. And I think one huge thing is like there's no color on the phones. This is the Light Phone 2 and the Light Phone 3. So this one only has an e-ink screen, so it's even like more limited in terms of the speed and the size. So it has a lot of the same function as Light Phone 3, but it's it rewires how you use the phone. You can't just text 20 messages back to back to back. You have to be a little bit more intentional. And, I think that ultimately helps lead to the lifestyle change. That is the fundamental part of using a Light Phone. I think more than most of the products I kind of talked about, like getting a new pair of shoes, the Light Phone asks a lot more of the user in terms of like probably a gym membership or a diet bite. You really have to think about how you're going to get around some of these things that you've been so used to. But that's also how it can have such a potentially positive and profound shift if you're able to transition yourself fully to something like the Light Phone. But I think, yeah, everything that you've experienced, we definitely feel is possible. And I guess I would just, sort of add that like when it comes to using a Light Phone, most users, myself included, have a device like this laptop which I'm using to do this podcast, or some people have a tablet or maybe their old smartphone, but they just keep it at home on Wi-Fi. So it's not about completely going cold turkey from social media or email, but being, as you said, sort of more intentional about carving out how and where and when you want those things in your life. For me, email is a huge aspect of running the Light Phone, but also an incredibly stressful aspect of running the Light Phone. So by, having it limited to my laptop, I love having a full keyboard versus trying to blast an email off on a small screen. I have all my files and links and everything's just sort of there to take care of business as efficiently as possible. And then at the end of the day, or let's say I need to focus on a deeper project, some writing or otherwise, I can close my laptop and not be tempted to just check and recheck.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big other aspect is that I think you sort of mentioned we have these expectations, uh, these illusions that people are expecting us to reply so immediately. Um, and I think one freeing thing of the Light Phone experience that anyone can take without necessarily transitioning is having more conversations around that. Like if you decide you want to check email, more regimented and scheduled hours, letting your colleagues know or your boss or your employees know that, hey, this is how to reach me for this type of urgency at these types of times. And I think by doing that, you realize like way more often than not, people are super accommodating, and that it's actually great to have these things spoken out so they're not even doubting themselves if this is an inappropriate time to email or this, or at least, I think my team knows like if they email me after a certain hour, I might not see it till the morning. So if it's a different degree of urgency, they might call or text me if I need to probably get to my machine. So for me, that's worked really wonderfully. And obviously not every single career will allow for this. And a full way that I have, but I think it's really cool to see the different ways that people carve the tools into their life, and it's all about being intentional and setting these sort of boundaries, and not because we're so addicted or this or that. It just really does help at least someone like my mind work in that carpent. I'm not going to be able to say that word. Compartmentalizing them into
Yes.
their different things.
Yes, it's good for all of us to have an idea of what we're going to do, when we're going to do it, and being intentional about that. Now, I think when I was hearing you talk in a town hall meeting that I was at, you mentioned something about how like this instant messaging got started back in the day. Who was it? Was it? Uh,
AOL maybe.
yeah, yeah. Talk about that a little bit, like the intention behind it and how what actually happened.
Well, if I'm remembering the right train of thought, it was, some of our first inspiration for the light phone was the idea that, like, on AOL Instant Messenger, you had things like away messages and you signed off. And I think it was, expected that you wouldn't be available 24/7, where now that we had the phone just so easily available, we sort of forgot that there is a way to turn off the internet. That the internet
Yes.
isn't something that has to be 24/7 accessible to us. And so I think that's really like what, when I reflected back on my instant messenger days, is like seeing how it transformed into this multi-platform where you find yourself going between four different apps that you're talking to people, and it's like that sort of just checking and rechecking and almost illusion of productivity that feels a part of that. And I think, there's so many things. There's like, just because you saw someone's post about them going on vacation and press thumbs up on Facebook doesn't mean you actually interacted with them and asked them about the trip. Or, there's a lot of these more shallow interactions that happen in lieu of, or instead of, real life or phone calls, or just more intentional reaching out to your friends and family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I noticed when I messaged my family and said, "Hey, I'm not on social media, so if you wanted me to know about something, you're gonna have to give me a call or shoot me a text." It was like, "Whoa, this could be like silent for a long time." But it's okay because it's distilling, it would help me edit relationships too, right? What's the
Yeah,
most important information that comes in, and what's most important for us if we're not on social media to share with others, right? Like a phone call, a letter, you know, getting together and putting your phones in a basket and sitting and having conversations about what's been going on the last 3 months since you've seen each other last. Like these are the connections that we crave and that we're missing and that we really are not getting by scanning social media, even though it feels like you're involved in people's lives. It's really a facade. It gives you a snack, like a little bite of something that makes you think that yeah, you're being satisfied, but you're actually just hungry for the deeper, bigger meal.
totally. Yeah, the food analogy of junk food versus real food and snacks is definitely real. And even to the extent of, if you're on a diet, you would probably not have snacks in your pantry.
Right.
If you're trying to cut down your digital diet and change it, you might not want snacks in your pocket.
Yes.
Sort of like,
Yes. Yes, and I found myself I've been snacking on my email at the stoplights. I mean, this is horrible. This is distracting me from real life things that could be dangerous to myself and my family and others. And so if you're listening and that's you, like you find yourself just obsessively checking your phone, or you're not even sure how often you're checking your phone, and you're thinking, "Oh, I want to go on a fast from social media or delete apps or whatever," go ahead, try that. I think that's a good idea because that gives you an idea of, a baseline of where you are right now. But I'm just thinking, just going from having all these apps on my phone, even if I delete social media, take my email off, just all the other distractions. Man, you can jump on Zillow and check out homes in your
totally.
neighborhood. For what? I wouldn't do this if I had to go to my computer, log in and like look up Zillow on my computer, right? But like you said, just the sitting down after a long day work or whatever, and then just looking around at the variety of apps that could just distract you and take you away, for 30 minutes ends up in 2 hours. And then just like, for what? I just lost time with my kids and my spouse. And like, I'm nowhere further down the road than before I started this.
1000%. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, what should parents who are looking to get their child a phone, why should they consider the light phone? You think about yourself, growing up in today's day and age, and if you're 12 or 13, and your parents thinking, well, I should get him an iPhone. They're going to give me a free one next time I sign up for the upgraded version. I could just give that one to Johnny and we'd be set. I'll put in all the security measures and all the software that pops up on my phone that tells them when they've accessed something that they shouldn't, like, what kind of give us your take on why parents should consider the light phone above a smartphone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting and kind of alarming conversation. Kaiway and myself are not parents ourselves, and honestly, we didn't set out with intentions of making a phone that would be suitable for children. And I actually think that is one of the pluses for the light phone in children's, because most kids don't want a phone that's inherently designed for kids. They want an adult phone. So that's one thing. But it was immediately obvious to us when parents started reaching out why a light phone might be a good fit, because there's obviously this concern of peace of mind of knowing that your child's reachable and can reach you. That's one of the wonderful things about cell phones. But then there's this huge other basket of, and sometimes parents don't even realize to the extent some of these things exist or could be harmful. They're just like, who knows what social media apps they might get that I'm not even aware of to block or this or that. And kids are very savvy. A lot of these software solutions are only so good, and even if you are locking it down, they're still probably using it more than they'd like. And we've heard of all sorts of problems with social media affecting mental health and confidence in kids, which is just so sad. And
Mm-hmm.
so grateful I didn't have that quantifiable metric, likes and friends and followers, in that way as a kid. And so you can imagine that to kids' performances in school affecting their attention span, bullying that happens on these things. So there's so many concerns that we hear from parents. And I think where a light phone or a flip phone or some other very simple phone, from a hardware perspective, like really stripped down, is that it will ease a lot of those concerns. But it also comes with other concerns of like, is my child now going to feel like they're missing out because everyone else is on this app and they're not on the app? So we sympathize a lot with parents, because these are not easy one size fits all sort of problems to deal with. Some kids need rideshare to get to school, or some schools are now leaning on assuming every child has a smartphone for scanning the homework assignment. And these are all just like very real things that parents and children are having to navigate. I think where like we've seen the light phone 2 work really well is, we've done a couple of experiments. One case study we did in with a school called Buxton in Western Massachusetts, where the entire school, it's a pretty small private school, as well as all of the faculty on campus, it was a boarding school, went completely smartphone free. So they all used the light phones for a full school year. I mean, they've kept the policy going, but for this study, and I think it was immediately apparent, some of the positive benefits, not just academically, but socially on campus. People were more engaged at lunch. When I interviewed the kids, they kind of hated the light phone, but reluctantly able to admit all of these fun things that were happening. So I think they appreciated it as time went on. And I think
Mm-hmm.
the fact that everyone was on the same boat just really made that a smoother experience. And, these kids, they did have state of the art computer rooms, and they weren't, just completely off the grid with it. They were still learning how to be, efficient in these programs that they'll probably need in college and their careers beyond, but without, the complete smartphone 24/7. So that was really encouraging, but it's also very hard to imagine that scaling across public schools and other things. We've seen some groups of parents or even sometimes students themselves kind of make these Luddite clubs or parent packs that like our teenagers, our kids aren't going to do it. And that's been really interesting to see. And we've seen a couple of other schools try similar initiatives. But it's really is a complicated and hard to navigate space. But I think overall, parents feel like the positives of a simpler phone have outweighed some of the potential negatives. But there isn't really a one size fits all. I think the light phone might be a great fit for some, but it's really a tricky thing to navigate.
I'm just so grateful that there's an option, a real cool looking option. Like this isn't the flip phone, which we know the flip phone is old because it flips open and you have to press one button 3 times to get a letter, right? Like,
Yeah.
so that is a little bit embarrassing for kids to use. But I've also met college students who are like, this is all I've got. I got, you go to ski slopes and they're like, show us your pass on your phone. And they're like, this is my flip phone. I don't have
No,
that. So you're going
we're
to have to,
seeing some of the full circle, which is
yes.
so awesome. Whether it's a light phone or a flip phone, we're just so encouraging of it all.
Yes. This is great. And I love the look of the light phone. Like it's sleek and it's thin and it can fit in your pocket. And like it's just a good looking phone and it's not giant like the phones are now, right? The
Yeah,
iPhones
they're
and Google,
quite
whatever.
small,
Yeah, like wallet size or credit card size almost.
pretty close to it. Yeah.
Yeah, this is great. This is so awesome. I mean, developing a phone and an operating system, like there's so much that goes into this, Joe. We were talking before we hit record that you're an artist, you love that time painting, and now you're 10 years into this. It's been 10 years since the launch of the first light phone, and now people are able to pre-order light phone 3. Like what drives you to continue putting in the work, or do you just sometimes think I'm just gonna go off grid myself and just disappear from this whole project?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that feels like a desire sometimes in the heat of it, but uh, I will say that it's been like beyond humbling to hear from some of our users across the board of types of reasons why they might have come to a light phone, or even like types of people that have found themselves using a light phone, and to hear the stories of like the tangible impacts that getting themselves off the smartphone, sometimes getting 3 to 5 hours a day back without the distractions throughout that, even just the quantity of time that they've been able to then funnel into their life, whether that's, enhancing the quality of their very close in their life relationships, taking on hobbies and passions with more seriousness, focusing on their job, their career, or even like, not avoiding some potential things in your life, frictions that you are difficult and you need to work on, whether you want to change your career or change your relationships. And so, I think seeing how that has snowballed in such like wonderful ways and hearing these heartfelt stories, like that moves us as a team so much. And as much as I love painting paintings, I don't quite get the same feedback. I don't think any of my paintings has had nearly that kind of impact on someone. And I always make it, remind them that they changed their life. Our phone was just a small catalyst, but we're just like so honored to be a part of that journey for them. Probably one of many products that they've incorporated to help them get there. So that really moves me, and I think we're a really small team, and some of our team has been with us for 8+ years now. Some of the oldest. I mean, we're still able to sit around a large dinner table, and I think their commitment to it and belief and passion like makes me be like, I have to see this through as far as it can go. And I think each year it feels like the world seems more open to the idea of a phone like the light phone. I think a lot of our struggles have been with the scale that we've been at and trying to get out there and making a phone as a small team is no easy task. And, each year we get a little bit better at it. The phone's
Yeah.
a little bit more advanced. We've fixed a couple of the quirks. We've learned a couple of lessons. So hopefully, each year the chance of it reaching more people is possible. So I still believe in it as much as I did at the beginning, if not more, maybe even.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, my day to day life is a little bit less glorious than maybe the fantasy dream I had of what I might be doing in my 30s, but it's also mind blowingly more impactful than I could have ever imagined. So I feel very
Mm.
just grateful that, we've had a lot of miracles align to get to where we are. And so just counting our blessings, really.
Hmm. Just what you said, the impact that you developing this device, along with people's choice, right? You have to engage, somebody has to engage their will in order to buy the light phone and then use it in the way that it's intended. But just the impact that this device is having on so many individuals, families, schools. That was so awesome that you shared about that whole school doing this experiment for a year, and communities. Like, we're getting our lives back, people. I mean, if you're listening to this, I want you to share this with other people in your community, because even though the light phone has been around for 10 years, it takes 10 to 15 to 20 years for people to really hear about something new like this, get on board, understand the community and the mission behind it. And so I feel like there's this real rising up that's happening with people of my age range that were born in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that are like, we are sick of all of this distraction. We are tired of the smartphone. We want to throw it out at the stoplight and run it over with our car. Like, give us another option. And it's like, wait, what? There's another option? Or we can get our life back, but still have a phone accessible to us for things like calling, shooting a text to somebody, directions in our car, because now we're dependent on that. We can't print out MapQuest directions anymore and thumb through, 17 pages to figure out how to get somewhere. But you've equipped this phone with just the necessary tools that we need for the basics, to stay in touch with people, but also the permission to get off of all of those other apps that are just distracting us and taking us away from our relationships. So talk to us real quick before we kind of wrap things up. Talk to us about privacy and how the light phone is better than alternatives when it comes to kids, and just the privacy issues you have to worry about with smartphones.
Yeah, I think, one huge aspect of the smartphone is that the business model behind everything from using Google products, Google Mail, Google Calendar, Google Maps, to something like Facebook, WhatsApp, social media, and these other things, is that our data is a hugely valuable asset that these companies are, you know, maliciously at times often uh, taking at any degree that they can capture. And in some ways, data harvesting feels harmless because you don't notice the immediate impact in your own life. You're like, well, I've had nothing to hide, then who cares? Is sort of a attitude that's really easy to take. But I think people are starting to realize that through all of this data collection, people are getting these hyper targeted ads and being able to, manipulate us and keep us vulnerable more and more effectively at almost alarming rates. And, there's probably even more unintended side effects that I'm not even aware of from it. So
Hmm.
it hasn't been like the number one reason why users get a light phone, but it's still something that I think is a fundamental part of why people support it. And that is really just that our business model is to sell you a phone. And we call it a phone designed to be used as little as possible, because none of our business model has anything to do with how much you use your phone or what kind of data is available, because we're not interested in the data, because it's not even a part of our business model. If we take users' data, their email address, if they're like signed up to our account and stuff, like that's our responsibility. So we don't want to have this huge responsibility of having everyone's data, uh, unnecessary data at least. And so, when we build tools for the light phone, something like our directions tool, we actually pay for each time a user queues up a navigation. because we are working with a company, similar companies that you might see in your car, white labeled like in-car navigation, to offer that service without sacrificing user privacy. And it may not be like everyone's biggest concern, but I think that's one fundamental aspect of us, of our belief, that to get away from this current model that the internet and all these platforms have taken, we feel like that's an important part of it. It's not that the light phone has crazy security features. So, sometimes those words get used interchangeably, but I think the fact that nothing on the light phone, you don't have your email, you don't have a lot of these information, your passport info, it's not on there, especially on the light phone too. You don't have even any images or things like that. Like, there's just a lot less data on there, and then there's no third parties that ever have access to it.
Mm.
So often on a smartphone, an app will seemingly be doing something very basic, but actually behind the scenes, they're trying to sell your data to some data broker. And that's their real business model. But you think you're just setting alarms or something like that. But it's like
Yes,
trying. And
jeez.
so, there's just a lot of really sneaky things happening. And I think a lot of users find our approach to be rather refreshing in that regard. And then when
Yes.
it comes to a kid, the Light Phone 2 doesn't have a camera. I think this one's probably even more suitable for a first phone. It's slower, smaller. It's not going to even be nearly as addictive in wanting to
Mm.
text or scroll around. It's really a super simple phone, and I think by not having any of that, it inherently limits some of the dangers of the phone. Light Phone 3, our newest model, does have a camera, and you can send images and things, so it is a little bit more uh, advanced in that regard, and maybe not as suitable to a very very first phone for a kid, but maybe a teenager that might be a nice middle ground compromise of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm. I love
but
that recommendation that the Light Phone 2 may be best for first time users. Um, yeah, that doesn't have the ability for them to be tempted to send crazy pictures to their friends and just be on it more often. But then if they prove themselves, I like the idea of kind of like graduating up to the next version of the phone too. So when the Light Phone 3, the third model, when does it actually launch?
So we began shipping at the end of March,
Oh.
but the nature of launching a product at our scale, we've been pre-sold out. So it's in this pre-order phase still. So we have gotten thousands of phones out into the world, and it's amazing to start to hear some of the feedback and see it out in the world. But right now, it is still on back order. I think with about an end of August estimated delivery. But we are getting Light Phone 2s back in stock. I think the gray one is, and the black one will be soon as well. But the new one, yeah, it's kind of like a place of pre-order, and then we deliver chronologically.
Wonderful. That's so exciting that you're sold out and there's a wait list and people have pre-ordered. They put their trust in your company and they're like, I can't wait to get my
I
new
know
phone.
we want to deliver faster, though. I think that's we're all eager. Everyone's getting a little impatient, us included.
Sure. I get that. Well, how long does a light phone last? Like, will we be pressured to upgrade to the next version, or is there going to be software updates that are going to cost us money, or there's no way to advertise to us through this phone because it doesn't have that capability, right? You're not going to be able to upsell us on things, and
Yeah, I'd say we take a very not aggressive approach in that regard. There's a term called planned obsolescence, which is when a technology maker intentionally cripples a product so that they can upsell you the new model. And this makes sense because if your profit is the foundational motive and direction of your company, that would increase profits. Lightphone takes a pretty different approach in that we try to future proof our devices as much as possible. So, something like the Lightphone 3, we really hope that this could last the user 3, 5 to maybe even 10 years. A few things we did were allow a user to replace the battery. I mean, you could always send it to us if you didn't feel comfortable, because that's a component that inherently degrades after a couple of years. So that's one component that we wanted to make easier to swap so that you can extend the life of your phone. And then because the features are so simple compared to a smartphone, these specs should be good enough to last for years. Maybe cameras will get a little bit better, but that's the camera on the light phone isn't trying to be the world's best professional camera. It's trying to be a nice, simple, fun tool for capturing a couple memories, or the utility of sending your spouse a photo of which towels do I buy and what do you
Right.
want? Here's
Yes.
the menu. Tell me what you want. Like, there's a very practical need as well. So, by making sure that the hardware was capable of lasting many years, and then on the software side, we don't have any intention to upsell you. And we actually don't see this as a replacement for this. We still support the software on the Light Phone 2. We're still making new ones. And there's lots of users that have this that didn't need the upgrades of the Light Phone 3.
Wonderful.
Or maybe they upgraded Light Phone 3 and then they're giving this to their kid now. There's a lot of ways, but yeah, I'd say that's something we're really proud, and that's our goal. I think it's a work in progress. We learned a lot about repairability from the Light Phone 2, things that might break that were hard to repair. We've tried to make something like the port more repairable on the Light Phone 3. So if you did break the port, we can probably fix it if you send it in. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. There's a company called Fairphone that is really amazing at it. And so we look to them as like a real admirable company to aspire for that level of repairability, and just
Nice.
transparency through their whole supply chain. It's really inspiring.
Wonderful. And I've heard that even though this is kind of blowing up and you guys are selling more and more of these and people are starting to really understand the benefits and getting their lives back, you also have good reviews on your customer support. And that's wonderful, right? I mean, because you can stop at an Apple store anywhere within like 20 miles of your home, it seems like, and just go in and help me with this. But to have a small team of people who are dedicated to fixing the problem, getting your phone back into your hands as soon as possible, and then just making a quality product that, like you said, doesn't expire when your payoff is coming next month. I'm noticing this with my own phone. I'm going, this is really weird. I just got a message saying, I've paid off my phone. And all of a sudden, like the it's bogged down and I can't get to things quickly. And I'm like, this is no coincidence. This is on purpose. So I'll go back and upgrade my phone. Like, this is nuts.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be conspiracy theorist or anything, but it really does feel like that is the case.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
it's a
there's
good way
been
to make
many
more money.
examples of them doing it in the past, a variety of companies, and not just phones. This is something that's been happening across things, but a billion smartphone users getting new smartphones every single year. It's pretty easy to imagine the environmental impact that can start to have.
Wow. Totally. Well, tell us the cost of a light phone. Well, how much is it going to cost for the Light Phone 2 that doesn't have the camera, and then Light Phone 3?
So this one is available for $299, and then the Light Phone 3 is currently at $599 pre-order price. There's a chance the final retail price for the Light Phone 3 might increase. Uh, there's a lot of different factors, but the tariffs are definitely one sort of ongoing thing that's really impacting our everything.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes, everything.
But so
Yes. Well,
$599 and $299 right now, if you were to pre-order the Light Phone 3.
wow. To me, this is way cheaper than a smartphone is. And
And people do get much cheaper phone plans. Is one other sort of benefit,
mm,
because you don't need as much data to do hours of YouTube. People are getting our one of our optional plans starts at $25 a month. Um, so for some users, the phone starts to pay for itself in that regard as well.
Yes, totally. Okay, and you can just take this phone when you get it, and you can any plan supports this phone. If you're with AT&T or Verizon or whatever,
The big
does that
carriers
work?
for sure, they're all certified. Some of the smaller carriers, it's a little bit more hit or miss. We do have some more info about that on our site. There's a page called Compatibility Checker, so you can see which country, which carriers. We're a little bit conservative. It probably works on more carriers than we claim, but those
Okay.
are the ones that we can guarantee. And if it doesn't work, we'll happily refund your phone or help troubleshoot it as much as we possibly can.
Yes. Awesome. Joe, this has been so enlightening. Feel so encouraged to have had you just share with us this new invention. I say it's new, 10 years old, but just this way of really revolutionizing how we use technology so that we can get our lives back. Like this is huge. This is what we're all about here at Families of Character is intentional quantity quality time with our loved ones. And when this smartphone is getting in the way nonstop every day and you've tried the different apps that are going to block you from using the social media and all this stuff and you still feel that drag and that emotional overwhelm and that heaviness, we have a new option now, the light phone. So thank you so much for what you and your co-founder are doing. I mean, this is tireless work. I know you have a team. So tell them from the bottom of our hearts here at Families of Character, thank you for improving our lives and giving us time back and to keep going. And I can't wait to be part of the light community and to see where this goes in the next 10, 20 years. Like you said, there may be other things that you guys invent that help us get time back in our lives and have more healthy relationships with the people that matter most to us. So thanks again, Joe.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes. Guys, go check out the light phone. Okay, go to their website and make sure that you consider the light phone as an option for yourselves and your children. If you've got a child coming up and you're thinking, oh, a birthday gift for them, well, it might be okay to suspend this idea of a computer in their pocket and instead get them something that will keep them connected to their friends and to you, but also um, uh, lead them not into temptation. I'm going to put it like that. So, anyway, if you felt that this was helpful, please share this with people in your community. Definitely share this episode with your spouse. Text it off to friends that you have that you've struck up conversations with about technology, social media, the impacts of the phone, all of that. Let's just really get this message out there far and wide. And we'll continue to bring on great guests like Joe in the future to talk more about just technology and how we can be intentional as parents and maximize life with our kids. I'll catch you on another episode of our show real soon. Take care.